Hi everyone, I want to talk about agency right now. I have a nifty little way that you're going to remember agency and what your fiduciary duties are. The big thing to remember in agency is really what is agency? Well, number one, agency is a legal agreement between two parties. And those two parties would be one would be the broker. In agency law, the broker is always called an agent, and the subagents work on behalf of the agent, otherwise known as broker, to help accomplish the principal, otherwise known as the client's objectives. So I don't like the way some books word agency. They'll say that you have the legal right to obligate your clients, but really it depends on what type of agency agreement that you actually have. So if you have an agency agreement that is a special agency agreement, then you actually do not have the authority to represent to obligate your client. So yes, absolutely, you're representing a client in the scope of real estate. You've signed an agreement, so now you have a legal agency agreement. But your legal agreement says that all you have the right to do is give them advice, look out for their best interest, and provide them fiduciary duties, which I'm going to go through the fiduciary duties with you. Now, if your agreement were to say that you had a general agency agreement, general agents have the power to obligate their clients. So, for example, the perfect example really of a general agency agreement would be a property management agreement. So, a property manager actually has the ability to, let's just say the toilet breaks. The tenant calls, the toilet has broken. The property manager could pick up the phone, call up a plumber, have them go out and fix it, and then they bill the landlord. So they actually obligated their client. Now, we as real estate agents who are representing a buyer, for example, we know that the contract says that they're supposed to get a home inspection or they're supposed to apply for a loan. We don't pick up the phone and apply for them. We don't pick up the phone and schedule for them without their written permission. So we would ask them up front. We do not have the ability to obligate them at any time, or we could find ourselves in big trouble. So remember, an agency agreement is a legal agreement between the agent and a principal. And a principal is, again, a client. An agent, again, is the broker. So depending on what type of agreement you have, do you have a special agency agreement? If you have a special agency agreement, you do not have the ability to obligate your client. If you have a general agency agreement, and I found in real estate general agencies, or general, the word general is always better than special. So again, general agency is always better than a special agency. So you have the obligation to protect your client, and on top of that, you have the ability to obligate them. So that's a really big deal. Again, more liability, and that's why property management is a risky type of business. As special agents, again, our risk stays pretty low because we are not obligating our client at any time. There's also universal agency. Universal agency is what I call parent-child, child-parent. We have on a broad scope, the ability to make decisions for our children, and then the decisions on behalf of our parents. So when we're parents, we make them for our children, and when we're children, when we're the children, and we're making them for our adult parents who need help. So that's really what a universal agency is. So it is on a broad scope, and it's more like a general agency because you have the ability to obligate. But the difference between general agency and universal agency is general agency is on one scope, such as real estate. Universal agency is on a broad scope, which means that it could be anything. End-of-life care, all the way to selling real estate. Doesn't really matter. And so those are your different types of agency laws. So again, depending on what your agreement says, will let you know what type of agency law that you're falling under. So again, don't forget that an agency agreement is a legal agreement between a principal and an agent. Okay, so let's go on to what the fiduciary duties are when there's an agency agreement signed and legally bound. All right, so one of the first things that I want to tell you is there's a difference between a customer and a client. So remember, a client is a person who has signed a legal agreement, whereas a customer is someone who is not. So that would be anybody who walks in off your open house, anybody who's in a situation where they have not signed any agreement with you, and you're not representing them. So believe it or not, there are fiduciary duties owed to the public as well, and the board wants you to make sure that you understand this because, of course, you're going to make sure that you are protecting the public the best to the best of your ability. So the number one requirement is disclosure laws. Now, the interesting thing about disclosure laws are they are both for clients and customers. Okay, so you've got disclosure laws for both. And I'm going to skip down a little bit because I'm going to come back to that. For customers only, there's fairness and there's honesty. Those are your only requirements for customer, except that there are 3 types of disclosures. And let's go over here since I didn't set up one of those fancy Excel spreadsheets. So there's 3 over here, and those are disclosure of agency relationship. So for example, if I am representing the seller and you are a customer that walks into my open house, you are a buyer, but you're not my client, I would have to disclose to you that I am representing the seller. The next one would be owner or investor. We are obligated to disclose to customers whether our buyer is planning to own, or occupy, or invest the property. It is a requirement that we must fill out. And the last one would be the most important, material defects. So anything that is physically wrong with the property, we must disclose to our clients and customers. And I'm just going to jump over here because guess what? The same thing applies with our clients. We've got to disclose the same thing. So we have the only big difference is there is actually an additional disclosure requirement that customers don't get, but clients do. And let me tell you what that is. That is transactional information. So if I know that, let's say my client is the buyer, and I know the seller will really take a lower offer, I would then be obligated to let my client know that because my client needs to know that. So any type of transactional information we have to tell a client, but we do not have to tell a customer. The way I remember my fiduciary duties, so I'm going to share it with you because it's just so much easier for me. If I can just share the way I remember is, and I'm going to put it up here so you can clearly see it, Dr. Cole. Dr. Cole, you'll never hear anybody else say this because I made it up on my own so I can remember. So the R stands for reasonable care and due diligence. And, oops, spelled that all wrong, but you get where I'm going with this. And let's see, what's next? C. C is for confidentiality. Okay, so very, very important. Oops, spelled that wrong. And let's go on to our O. Notice, customers stopped with disclosure, fairness, honesty. Nope. For clients, we have a lot more. Obedience. Oops, I'm spelling everything wrong tonight. Let's see if I spelled, oh, wow, that was exciting. What happened here? Obedience. My A stands for accounting, and the L stands for my favorite, loyalty. All right, so let's talk about this. Oops. Oh, the Y there. Okay, so disclosure, and there's 4 requirements under disclosure. There's R for reasonable care and due diligence. There is C for confidentiality. So anything that they deem confident, we would have to keep to ourselves. And believe it or not, this one and this one remain for life. So the accounting and the confidentiality remain for life. So even after our agency relationship is done, we still must keep everything that they deemed confidential to ourselves for life. And same thing with accounting. Let me explain to you what accounting is. So accounting would be like if I have their pay stubs or their key to their house or any documents or items that are important to our client or that our client has an interest in, we have to protect those at all at all cost, really. So make sure that when you're working with a client that you're protecting all of, like for example, their good faith deposit check. I mean, would it be okay if we lost their certified funds? Absolutely no. We would be violating the fiduciary duty of accounting. So again, Dr. Cole, disclosure, reasonable care, due diligence, C for confidentiality, O for obedience, A for accounting, and L for loyalty. Those are your fiduciary duties. And I hope that this helps you with uh, your agency section. There will be questions on your exam about agency, and with those in mind, and just be careful to make sure that you understand the difference between each section. And you know what, while I'm right here, let me go into a little bit more about reasonable care and due diligence. For example, your forms, your sales contract. Is it okay to leave a sales contract not completely filled out? Maybe it's 2 a.m. and you're tired and you just don't want to finish it. No, it's not okay, because if they're our client, we're supposed to provide them reasonable care. Oh, and look at that. It's not car, it's care. So care, and care means filling out everything the way it's supposed to be filled out. Let's just say, for example, they wanted the rolling kitchen island and you forgot to put it in the sales contract. Right here, you would get yourself into trouble because we're supposed to be providing them a level of care. So Dr. Cole, and then just disclosure, fairness, honesty for customers. So we can't lie to them. They may ask us questions that go against our client's confidentiality. That doesn't mean we lie. That means we say we're not obligated to discuss that, or we're not capable of disclosing that information, that the seller has asked us to keep it confidential. You know, we could say something like that. You can really say anything you want, but you don't lie and you don't answer the question. So I'm sure you're crafty enough to be able to figure this one out. Okay, what happens once you have performed? So in other words, if I'm your real estate agent and I have found you a property, at this point our agency agreement is over because I have performed. Also, your legal agreement, your contract, your exclusive right to represent the buyer could have an expiration date. So once the expiration has passed, at that point your agency relationship is dead. Now don't forget, there are two that remain for life, but other than that, the rest of this is not owed at any time anymore. Now we go over to the customer side. So we have to be honest, fair, and keep our disclosures there. So these are very, very important. Other than that, you know, your agency relationship is done. Uh, if your a term of agreement is still in place, then obviously they're still a client. I hope that answers all of your questions. And please don't forget there's a difference between a principal and a principal broker. A principal is a client, and a principal broker would be one broker designated by each firm to ensure compliance. So that's how it works. Maybe not in every state, so you want to check your state. However, in a lot of states, there is one principal broker designated to each firm, and that would be the one that the board, the real estate board, stays in communication with. So if you hear the word principal, did it say principal broker or did it say principal? If it says principal, we're talking about a client. If it says principal broker, we're talking about the one principal broker designated by each firm to ensure compliance and manage and maintain the licenses in the firm. Okay, so that's your agency lesson, and I hope that helps you guys out. Thanks.